Hi guys, and welcome to today's video where today we are setting up feeder insects. In particular, we're starting a new breeding colony for my mealworms. If you remember, I had a mite infestation. I had to get rid of my breeding colony, I had to get rid of the Morio worms, and I had to rush out and get whatever food I could get over Christmas, which happened to be giant mealworms, which I'm not a massive fan of, but that's all they had. So I got those. I also, with the mealworms and Morio worms, I ordered crickets, but I went ahead and set them up already because there's nothing really different there. They basically have sawdust for the bottom, lots of cardboard just to hide in. The problem is, if you ever find your crickets are smelling, it's probably the cardboard. They soil it quite quickly. These guys have been in here about 5 days, and yeah, I'm gonna have to replace a lot of this. But the setup is pretty standard, what I usually do with my crickets, but the mealworms and Morio worms are gonna be different. Now, a little while ago, a company called BioBuyer reached out to me and asked if I wanted to try out their pods. So basically, these pods, there's 5 of them, and the initial, or the original plan, what it's marketed for is so you would raise your own mealworms to eat yourself. Now, I'm not quite at the point of wanting to nibble on a mealworm, but I do have geckos who quite enjoy that. So I thought, okay, let's try these, but for my breeding colony. Now, basically what you do is you start off with mealworms. Once you see some pupas, you separate them out. They go into here, they come out as beetles, they lay eggs. You move those beetles on, and then after a while, you'll start to see mealworms in here. And then these beetles have laid eggs here, and so on and so forth. So I'm gonna try it. However, one of these are gonna be taken up with Morio worms. Now, you may be wondering, what is that substrate you're using? Well, it's the habitat spider bedding. I don't know if this is good. I've never used it before, but basically I don't want to use grain, oats, or bug grub, especially with the mite outbreak we had. And initially in the mealworm setup, I think I had like earth mix, arid, and probably eco earth and all sorts in there. But this time I just thought, right, let's get something I can use with all the insects. Apparently this is great for burrowing animals, and you know, mealworms, Morio worms love to burrow, so I thought, let's try this. Another reason I find substrate to be quite important for our feeder insects is because when I got these giant mealworms, when we had the whole mite outbreak, I had to keep them in a conservatory, and I wanted to keep their bedding really simple, so they didn't really have much substrate. Now, a lot of people get giant mealworms because they are told they don't pupate. Well, they certainly do. And I think one of the reasons they've pupated so quickly is a lack of substrate. So when they feel exposed, they seem to pupate. And that's why, in my experience, if you give them something deeper to burrow in, although, you know, it's inevitable with mealworms, they're going to pupate, it slows it down a little bit. So anyway, let's set these guys up. So first we're going to start off with the Morio worms, also sometimes known as superworms. These do come with bug grub, but it's not too bad. And what we're going to do, like a good old cooking show, is mix these guys in. Generally, Morio worms last longer, and I think that's why people like to keep them and feed them, because they don't tend to pupate unless you separate them from the rest and sort of leave them in a pot without substrate. A few times I've had it where a beetle or a Morio worm hasn't got eaten in a tank, it's gone on to pupate, and it's become part of the cleanup crew. Diego has one in his tank, Ziggy had one in her tank, and that beetle actually lives with my fruit beetles that's still living. And so it can happen, but they do last a long time. So they're handy to have, but remember, only as treats really. They're not that healthy. I'm gonna give them a little bit of courgette. As you can see, they've got bits of food in here already. So pop that in. I'm going to pop the lid on, so we've got some ventilation, and these can actually stack, so we're going to try that. I just don't want it to get too humid in there for them and food go mouldy and stuff like that, but it is good practice to remove that food. But what tends to happen, especially when they're burrowing, is they take the food down with them. Now for the mealworms, I can't see any pupae yet, so we will just put them all in. thought I'd do a little time lapse of them like going in the dirt, but there's so many of them that you can't actually tell too much. But as you can sort of see by some of them, instinctively they want to hide. So I'm going to mix them up a bit. There are so many in here. But the good thing about using this darker substrate as well is if there are pupas, we should be able to spot them because they're white, whitey yellow anyway. The pods also come with this piece of equipment. Now you may have seen something sticking up in the middle of these, this little thing here. And basically this would pop on, and say you had your mealworms in here, you could pick out the pupa, put them on there, take this out or remove them and put them in another pod. But I wanted the substrate to be quite deep, so I haven't done that. However, now I'm wondering, is it too deep? Because some of these are looking to get out, but luckily the ventilation is like still small enough that they can't escape. But let's give them some courgette as well. I like to cut it quite thin. I find now that like if you put in a big chunk, it will get eaten, but you know, a lot of it could be left. But if it's thin enough, they sort of go through it quite nicely. I'm sure like in the Morio Worms, in no time this is going to be taken down. But yeah, the next pod that I set up is mainly for when I start to see pupa and I want to put them in here and see the beetles hatch out. Now you can feed every stage of the life cycle. You can feed your geckos the pupa or the beetles. I've been feeding off the giant mealworm pupa to my geckos. Like, I feel bad, but at the same time, you know, it's part of their diet. They can try it. So once you do start seeing those, don't feel like, oh, that's it, I can't do anything with them. Your gecko can eat them and will probably enjoy them. Now, before I go, I know whenever I do these unboxing videos, I'm always asked, where do you get your feeder insects from? A lot of people, especially during the time we're in right now, it's difficult to sort of leave your house sometimes. They're like, I can't go to the shop, or the shop might not have them. Luckily in the UK, all pet shops are still open. However, I always just get mine online. So I go between Swell Reptiles and Internet Reptile, to be honest, like whenever I can get the best deal. If I'm buying more than just feeder insects, who has, you know, the cheaper product of each website. So those two, if you're in the UK, are great options. I don't know a ton about the US, but I have heard a lot of people mention rainbow mealworms, so maybe you could check them out. I don't know much about them, I just know I've heard of them. If you want these pods, you want to try those out, I will leave the link here. Also, Rob from highgradeinsects.com reached out to me because he actually makes kits for feeder insects. So if you've got your mealworms, Morio Worms, crickets, stuff like that, he will make kits that can help you, you know, house these and probably get the best out of them. So I'll leave that link below as well. But I hope you've enjoyed today's video. It's been a bit different. We'll see how this goes. Hopefully it goes well. I'm worried about some of these guys trying to escape, but it's quite cool. And basically what we can do now, put their lids on, stack them up, and people think I've got some weird cool thing going on in the room, but it's actually my feeder insects. So we'll see how they go. Maybe I will do an update, so make sure you are subscribed, you've got those notifications on so you don't miss it. But I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.